Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel Anita and I like to do videos on finances, mental health, just about anything that I am feeling. Today we're going to be doing a video about ADHD meds. I've been on ADHD meds for 2 years now and I want to talk about how they have changed my life, what it was like before I got diagnosed with ADHD and what my life is like now. I feel like a lot of people especially during the pandemic, got diagnosed with ADHD and began questioning their life and how it's going and what's going on. And a lot of us came out with the conclusion that we have ADHD. I'm one of those people and I want to share my story with you. Before we get started, I want to share Magic Mind with you. Magic Mind is a productivity drink that is my favorite. I have been drinking it for about 2 years, I don't know, just as long as I think I've been taking my ADHD meds actually. And again, it's a productivity drink that has a bunch of really great ingredients in it. The reason I started drinking Magic Mind is because they reached out to me. I was actually already taking a lot of the ingredients that are in these drinks, including curcumin, which is turmeric, ashwagandha, L-theanine, and those are some of the ingredients that are in this drink. Some of the other ingredients are vitamin C, D, echinacea. They have matcha, which gives you a little boost of energy, lion's mane mushrooms, a lot of funguses that are really, really good and supposed to help with your cognition. So the ingredients in Magic Mind are very good, backed by research, and huge fan. So when they told me that it's in a little drink that you just take a shot every day, I was in. You can get a subscription of it, that's what I have, where they send you a package and you can drink one every day. That's when the effects work best. These ingredients work best when you take them continuously. So it's not just like a one-shot thing, you should be taking them continuously, and I really enjoy it. So again, it's just one little shot with all of the really good ingredients. It says, do more, stress less, and I have found it to be an incredible addition to my life. I usually have it with my decaf coffee. I usually wake up, go downstairs, grab my coffee, grab this out of the fridge, and my husband usually grabs one too, and we are good to go. It's just so easy, and again, it has so many ingredients that are really good for your cognition. And as someone with cognitive dysfunction, as I'm going to mention later in this video, a lot of us have that issue here. I found that this is really a nice addition to my routine, and it's really great. If you're interested in trying it out, you can check down below in the description. I'll have a link with a discount code for you. Again, I'd give it a shot, see if you like it, see if you like having it in your routine, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as I do. Okay, again, I am Rachel Anita, and I am a 28-year-old person living right outside of Washington, D.C. I'm originally from California, and I'm just going to go over my history a bit with you, and my mental health history with you as well. So I was raised in a family in California. There was a lot of siblings. I was raised in Southern California. I had 3 siblings. I had 2 parents married, and I was raised in a religious upbringing. I, from very early on, remember very little of my childhood, and this has become like a common thread with people in our situation. We don't remember much of our childhood. Most of the things that I remember are bad things. I experienced a lot of trauma when I was little, and that's what I remember, really. My parents were always loving to me, but unfortunately there were situations that I ended up in that were not great. I always remember feeling strange, confused. I felt kind of different than my peers. It was in high school that I became very depressed. I began drinking in early high school, I think. And that would become a really big theme in my story. So I just remember being depressed, and things got a lot worse in college. I entered university and I was drinking a lot. I also met my first love, and it was a very unhealthy relationship. It was very volatile, and I ended up extremely depressed, and that's when I first entered therapy. So I was going to therapy and I was taking medication, but it wasn't working because I was drinking a lot. I am an alcoholic, I call myself that now all the time. And again, my drinking escalated in college. I didn't think it was a problem yet, but I knew I had mental health issues, severe ones. I never tried any other types of substances because I knew something was wrong with me. And I knew things would get worse if I did anything else. After I graduated college, I moved across the country in a alcohol-fueled panic. Basically, I moved across the country. I ended up in DC, and I spent the next 6 months drinking very heavily in my apartment, after work, during work, before work. And yeah, my drinking got a lot worse. And it was around this time that I got into rehab. I went into IOP, which is intensive outpatient in Washington, DC. And that's when I first started trying to get sober and started really thinking about my mental health. And again, this is all going to go back to ADHD, and I know that a lot of you relate to these things because I'll go into it. But yeah, severe mental health, alcoholic addiction issues, and I started to get sober. I started going to AA, I started doing all these things. I was relapsing, it was not good, I was having a hard time. My first love from college ended up passing away during this time. It was all very intense. I met my current husband, and it was just really an intense time. And I feel like once I got sober, things really started to change rapidly for me. So again, I got sober, I went to AA, the pandemic started. I stopped going to AA, but I maintained my sobriety. I was in therapy, kind of, and I had these intense physical problems that I didn't remember having before. So I would sleep all day. I slept maybe like 18 hours a day, more. I could not stay awake during the day. I had this deep, heavy brain fog just over my head all the time. Someone in my comments once described it as a wet towel on top of your head, and that kind of is what it feels like. I feel like there's a screen in front of me, like stopping me from being able to focus on the world. I had a lot of pain. I had joint pain, back pain, my muscles constantly hurt. So I had a lot of chronic pain. And once I got sober and I was just at home because it was the pandemic, these issues really expounded and became it infected a lot more of my life and my relationship with my spouse. It affected my relationship with my spouse because I slept all day. He was just like, why are you sleeping all day? Get up, you know, like he was worried I was gonna lose my job. He was very irritated at me because I wouldn't follow through on tasks. I didn't want to do tasks. Like if he asked me to do the dishes, I'd be like, yeah, sure, or whatever, and then not do it. I'd forget. If he asked me to do the laundry, I would eventually do the laundry, but then once I put it in the dryer and it was dry and I went downstairs and I just didn't want to pull it out, I turned the dryer on again. I just did these insane things that, yeah, I couldn't pay attention to anything anyone said. I was constantly just like in this screen. I was behind the screen and I wasn't able to connect with people. Like my husband would be talking to me and I would have no idea what he was saying to me. I was unable to focus on what he was saying. And it was just terrible, right? And so I knew something was severely wrong with me. I had physical pain, my sleep was insane. And so I began, and I was finally sober. And so I decided to try to start figuring out what was wrong with me. So, because now I didn't have to deal with the alcohol thing, I started deciding that I don't want to live like this anymore. I want to find out what's wrong, and I'm going to do that. So the first thing that I did was, okay, so sleep, depression, right? Like that's associated. Chronic pain can be associated, ooh, my shoulders right now. Chronic pain can be associated to mental health. And so I decided to go full in mental health, right? So I had therapy every week. I started really digging into the really intense issues. Like before I was kind of like, I'm having a hard time, my friends and I are fighting, but now I was like, this is what happened to me and I want to know why, you know, or like there is a secret that I've been holding my whole life and I want to talk to you about it and I want to understand it, and etc., etc. So it's when I started using therapy in a very like deliberate way that my life started changing. So I started dealing with an OCD that I have. I did intensive prolonged exposure therapy, which is often used for PTSD. It was a painful process, once a week, reliving a situation that really informed my life. And because I was finally ready and capable to begin addressing it. And it was about 4 months later that I feel like I finally mostly released that situation. And my medication, my depression medication was working because I wasn't drinking anymore. My anxiety medication was working. And so I realized after doing all this therapy and taking my meds like I was supposed to, that I wasn't depressed anymore and I wasn't anxious. But I still had this horrible pain and I was unable to focus. I was unable to remember things. I was sleeping all day still. So I was like, okay, maybe it's a physical thing. So at that point, I ended up going in to get blood tests done. I got my thyroid checked. I got a sleep study done. I did all of these different things. I saw so many specialists to try to figure out what was wrong with me physically. And everything came back positive, thankfully. I'm sorry, negative, thankfully. Like I was clear health-wise. It wasn't a sleep apnea thing. There was no weird sleep disorder. But that meant that I had no answers. So during this time, I kind of got stuck on chronic fatigue syndrome as my issue. You know, like I just wanted to put a name to my diagnosis, and that was the one I came up with. However, so I was again so stressed out that I wasn't able to solve this issue, and I was Googling, and one day I stumbled upon ADHD inattentive type. So I found out that inattentive type is commonly found in women. It can also be found in men, but it's not the normal hyperactive ADHD that's often thought about like in little children, little boys. And it was during this time that I very anxiously presented it as a possibility to my psychiatrist, who then tested me for it. He talked to my husband. I took like I didn't take a paper test because I've been working with him for 2 years. So he kind of just asked me some questions. He looked at my intake documents to see that I had said the same things 2 years prior. And he talked to my husband, who again was like, yeah, she is a mess cognitively, like just absolutely a mess. And so I was diagnosed with ADHD. So that's what happened from when I got sober and I wasn't able to mask all these issues I had with alcohol and I was just myself, right? That I figured out something's wrong with me, and then I ended up with ADHD and a positive diagnosis for ADHD, and my life completely changed. If you've been in this situation or are in this situation, you know what a relief it is to find answers to what has been like haunting and hurting you for so long. And that's what it was for me. It was such a relief, right? And I was ready to do whatever I was asked to do and change my life. At that point, my doctor diagnosed me with medicine, right? So he diagnosed me with Ritalin at first, which I started like on the lowest dose, and then I doubled it the next day, and I found that the doubled one worked best for me. I took it twice a day, but then I realized it wasn't lasting long enough. So I spoke to him again and he prescribed me with Concerta. I think at first it was 18 milligrams. I'm on 36 now. We went up to 52 for a while, but now we're back down to 36 milligrams. So I'm currently on Concerta 36 milligrams that I take once a day in the morning when I wake up. I usually take it with my coffee and before my Magic Mind. And my life has completely changed. So if you haven't tried medicine before and you haven't found one that works, you don't know that it's like immediate. Like you take it and an hour later or 15 minutes later, depending on what type of medication you take, it's like immediate. You're just like, I can listen to what you're saying to me. I'm not sleeping all day anymore. Oh my God, I just finished this work project that I've been putting off for 1.5 years. Like that was my first day on Concerta. And it was amazing. It was so freeing and liberating. It finally felt like I was a normal person, like my husband, you know, who doesn't have this problem. So there were some beautiful immediate effects. I was very lucky that I didn't have to try different medications. I didn't have to, you know, try a ton of different dosages. I know a lot of people in my comments are struggling with finding the right medication for you. I would continue trying and, you know, continue fighting to find your answer. Thankfully, my process was a little bit easier. So I keep touching my hair. One of my like sensory issues is hair. But I like putting it down in videos. So things were immediately better, but now I want to talk about 2 years on. So I have been on, I think, Concerta for almost 2 years now. And again, it has completely changed my life. So at the time I started Concerta, I had dealt with my PTSD, I had dealt with my PTSD, I had dealt with my alcoholism, I had dealt with a lot of issues that had been affecting me and affecting my life. And I was finally on this medication that could change my life, right? Now, a lot of our behavior is learned. It's hard to change innate behavior, but I found that it was a lot easier to change my behavior once I was on this medication. So I still didn't want to do the dishes, but I was more likely to do the dishes. Like before, if I saw dishes in the sink, I would ignore them and I'd be like, I'm not looking at that. But now like I see dishes in the sink and I'm like, oh, I have to do and clean those dishes. And I don't know why, but the brain just changes that way, you know? And so something I've discovered is that, you know, when I'm on medication, I feel a lot more capable and it's easier for me. But now when I don't take my medication, I can still function a lot better than I used to because I have learned behaviors while I'm on medication that allow me to continue doing those things. There are some days I don't take medication if I'm sick or something, but I feel like my stamina and my ability to get things done is a lot stronger than it used to be because I learned behaviors while I was on medication that have allowed me to continue doing these things. At this point, my life had very much improved. My relationship with my partner had improved immensely because when he told me to do the dishes now, I just did them. When he was talking to me, I was listening to him because he would be able to tell that I was not listening to him before. You know, I was able to focus on work and get a lot more done when I had struggled so much to just stay focused in meetings and things like that. I've also discovered a lot of things about myself. You know, I've discovered like what I need at work. Like I need to ask for certain things at work so I can work better because of my ADHD. I have also been able to do a lot of work mentally on my mental health that I would have never have been able to do. So ADHD often has a comorbidity, I cannot say that word, with a lot of other mental health issues. So a lot of people with ADHD might also be autistic. A lot of people with ADHD might also be on the spectrum. A lot of people with ADHD deal with depression. A lot of people having ADHD makes you way more susceptible to having an addiction. So I know a lot of us here, we have dealt with that issue before. A lot of us here, you know, like you likely have some other issues if you also have ADHD. And that's really what I found for myself. Like I also have OCD, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and those greatly inform my life. But once I was able to get sober and be on medication, I was finally like clear-headed enough to start dealing with issues that I had in my own disposition and in the way I behaved. A lot of learned behaviors. So I have a lot of learned behaviors from my childhood. That's why I explained my childhood earlier. I have an issue with loss of control. I need to be in control of every situation in my life or I am very uncomfortable. That's what brings me anxiety. I need to have control. Like being on medication for 2 years has taught me and my husband a lot about how to interact with each other. Again, I need control and I have like something that I call demand avoidance. I avoid demands. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being like caged and like controlled. And being on medication for so long has allowed me to focus on things that I struggle with in my daily life that aren't that apparent, like my control issues and what I can do to improve them. So I've been able to improve parts of my life, like my working with my husband. He knows now that like I have an issue with control and that I need to feel like I'm in control of situations when I can be, obviously not all the time. But he knows now how to speak to me. So I prefer to be given 2 options rather than to be told something to do. So my husband, instead of being like, hey, can you do the dishes later? Will be like, hey, I'm going to do the dishwasher. You think you could do the dishes or clean the counter later, and that gives me more agency on what I want to do, and so I feel like I'm picking the thing, and so like it doesn't feel as much like he's telling me what to do. And just that's he's changed the way he speaks to me to make us have a better relationship, and I'm doing these things now that he wants me to do. And I also know I have this issue, so I can actively work on it, and that has been so liberating and something I could never have achieved without being diagnosed with ADHD and being on medication. Being on medication has helped me to be more myself. It is not a cure-all. Like, I still have issues with pain and brain fog and focus sometimes, but it has definitely improved my quality of life. I hope that it can improve yours. It's different for everyone again, but I just wanted to share an update on my story because my life has improved tremendously, and I really think that if you get a diagnosis and try medication or different treatments, if medication isn't an option for you, that you can change your life. Now, a comment that I get often is like, I got diagnosed and I got prescribed medication, but I am still extremely anxious, or like things aren't getting better for me, or all of these other things. And nobody likes my answer because it means you have to be vulnerable and do some work. And my answer is you need to go to therapy. Like, if you can, honestly, like obviously not everyone can do it, but if you can, you need to go to therapy. All of us need to be in therapy. If we have ADHD and if we have mental health issues and if we came from a strange childhood or a traumatic childhood, like, we need to be in therapy, and you do too. Like, if your medication isn't working for you, or if you're not feeling way better, or if you're still dealing with anxiety or depression, like the ADHD medicine is not going to make that better. You need to deal with the things that have caused you to be the way you are. And therapy has been so liberating for me. The thing that helped me to be who I am today and to have more control over my life is knowing myself deeply and knowing why I am that way I am, why I behave the way I do. And so I think, like, if you have an ADHD diagnosis, you also need to be in therapy, because our problems aren't just fixed with medication. We need to be working actively to change our behavior and help ourselves and have a better life. And it's important in therapy to not just like sit there and be like, yeah, I had a hard day this week, work was tough. Like, you know, why was it tough? You know, like, was it because your manager talked weird to you? Well, what happened that your manager talked weird to you? You know, oh, like, it wasn't actually your manager was being weird, but you took it as weird because you have an issue with authoritative figures, because as a child your dad was very authoritative. Like, everything, like all of the ways we react to people and our interactions with people go back to like learned behavior. And so, like, for example, myself, I did not have a lot of control over my daily life as a child. Like, I didn't have a lot of agency. I was constantly in fight or flight mode. I was constantly having to lie or fake things, or, you know, I was just not able to be myself or do the things that I needed to do or wanted to do. And so that has continued on to daily life now and affected my daily life, and also affects the way my ADHD manifests and the way medicine works to improve things for me, and what things the medicine doesn't improve for me. So medication has allowed me to like be able to see things a lot more clearly and identify the things that I need to improve in my life. And that's really hard, like being honest with yourself and looking at the things in your past that have affected you and made you the way you are. Like, it can be extremely painful, and I know it was painful for me. Like, it's been so painful, and it's also been liberating. I feel like I'm in one of the best case scenarios at the end of all of these things, as someone who's an addict, someone who has depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, just all of these different things, and being in the situation that I am now in, I know it's very lucky, like, that things fell into place with me, that my mental health isn't worse, and like schizophrenia or things like that, which some of my family members have. But it took a lot of work and willingness to change. So if you have the resources or if you have the opportunity to go into therapy, to take medication, to try these different things out, do it, because that's what's changed my life. I now have an amazing life with my spouse. We bought a house. I have a dog who I love dearly and can drop $600 on if they need surgery. Like, I was able to get my finances in order. I have been able to support, like, the most incredible thing about medication is that I've been able to be there for those that I love. My dad got really sick with pancreatic cancer last year, and I was able to move there for 6 months and be a caretaker. Now, I would have never been able to do that if I hadn't sobered up, if I hadn't gone into therapy and dealt with my issues, if I hadn't found out I had ADHD and got on medication, because I would just be sleeping, drinking, or dead, you know? And it took work, but I'm so grateful that I'm able to be there with my father during this time, be there with my family during this time. And so that's really the biggest change in my life since 2 years ago. Like, I'm able to be present. I'm able to do the things that I really want to do. Whereas before, it wasn't my fault, but I was stopped by this illness that I didn't know. And so I want to motivate you and encourage you to seek out help, to keep trying, to, if you can, if you have the resources, do therapy. If you can't afford therapy, if you don't have access to it or medicine, join a Reddit group where you can talk about your feelings, online AA programs, or not just even AA, but like online therapy groups, online communities where you can talk to people about your feelings. Like, there's a lot of options out there, and if you try and remind yourself and take your medication every day for whatever it is you're dealing with, like, your life will change. And I would love to hear from you in the comments if you relate to any of this at all, because it is very heartening to hear that people are benefiting from me sharing, or I just like to hear your guys' experiences. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I just wanted to give you this update because a lot of you ask how I'm doing now. And before we close out, I want to remind you to check out Magic Mind in the description down below. You can get a subscription to it or just check it out, buy just one box or something. But I have a discount code down below. And again, thank you so much for supporting my channel. I really appreciate it, and I will see y'all soon.